Enemy trait is one of the most well-known features in Battlecats, ranging all the way from red enemies to zombies and eventually even aqua enemies. What are the strongest traits though? How tough are they? What does Battlecats really have to present at its endgame? So this video is the biggest project we've ever released, and it was definitely put in the most effort into. This is basically the entire compilation of a series that has been going on for the past 2 months very successfully. Whether you have watched it before or not, this video will cover so much more and will be a good finale to finish off the series. First of all, because it's been a while since we started this channel, and this is probably a good ending point for the first big era of our channel, I think you guys deserve to know a little bit about us and how this operation started. If you're just interested in the video, you can skip to the time shown right now. So let's get started. So if you're invested in Battlecats, there is a high chance you've seen this Mr. Cat pop up lately on your recommendation. This will be no surprise, as we have built a very strong community in this channel, and we have been making very high quality content and consistent videos on the game. But you might ask, who actually is this Mr. Cat? Where did he come from? Why the hell does he look like those low budget YouTube channel from 2014? I would like to be as open with you guys as possible and tell you the entire story, because I truly think you deserve it. So this whole operation, as you might call it, started with me and 2 friends who wanted to be successful on YouTube and make content. We brainstormed different ideas and kept going back and forth until we realized the absolute best option is to make content on this great mobile video game that we all used to grind. And we realized we were also quite good at making these videos. Well, we improved with time. You see, our third Battlecats video was the one that really made us sure this is what we wanted to do. Why red enemies can be scary. We felt very proud of this video and the quality it had. It was also received well by our community, getting lots of views and new faces to the channel. As we kept making videos in the series of every trait in the game, while also making some side project, we realized this could actually go big, as we were improving with every video and quality was getting better and better. And around this time, we decided our goal is to truly build the biggest Battlecats community that has ever existed. We could now rest until this goal was met, and that has kind of become our slogan now, that we place in the beginning of every video. But obviously, we cannot do this alone, or just on YouTube. We need you guys, every Battlecats player out there. That is why we recently have been experimenting with different kinds of content, such as Shorts, TikTok, Twitch, Instagram, hell, even Twitter. And we're trying to get players from all around. We truly cannot do this without your help. We need committed players who are willing to help achieve this goal, whether that just means subscribing to the channel and watching our content, inviting your friends to be part of the channel, or even becoming part of the team by joining as a Patreon. And that's about it. We'll bring the game back to its prime together. So without further ado, go grab your favorite snack, lay back, maybe even load your chillest video game while playing this in the background. And let us get started with the Traitless enemies. Traitless enemies are the 8th trait, the first trait introduced in the game. Why talk about them only in the 3rd to last episode, you might ask? Well, you see, Traitless relevancy starts slightly later, which is why they're only mentioned now. Emperor of Cats is full of Traitless enemies, however, these are not really threatening as we all know. Tourist Cat is an example of an anti-Traitless cat with guaranteed chance to freeze them for 1 second, as well as being resistant to them with single attack and a long cooldown to balance its abilities. You can get it by completing the advanced stage, Bomber Girl. While there are many strong Traitless enemies, there are 2 stages I will discuss at the end of this video that are so deadly they deserve their own section. I appreciate the insane amount of support lately, and promise we will build the biggest Battlecats community to exist and bring the game back to its prime. So make sure to subscribe to help us reach this goal. Well, here's the catch when it comes to Traitless enemies. First of all, they, as well as other traits left in the series, do not have full treasures, meaning abilities like resistant, massive damage, and strong against are less effective on them. Second of all, Traitless has an insane lack of effective units, most of them either being dropped from advanced stages, or Fest exclusive, or other difficult feats like beating the Aqua Realms for Jane. Therefore, most Traitless enemies have to be handled with more general units. With that being said, let's move on to the early game of Traitless enemies. Let's start off with Master A. He's one of the first enemies you'll encounter on Stories of Legends, with it being in the final stage of the second subchapter. It serves as a backliner with 451 range, meaning your dragon cats will not be able to snipe it. Even crazed Bahamut can't outrage him. Your best shot would be to try and tank him down with cats that are relatively bulky and can tank hits from him, or gacha units that can outrange him easily. In Pasta Desert and UL Remix of Tapas Desert, you will see him as an extremely high magnifications, making him nearly impossible to tank and making outranging him a must. The Slav comes not too far after Master A, with it being the final stage of the fourth subchapter. It has very similar bulk to EOC 3 Teacher Bunbun, which may sound scary at first, but his very low attack rate makes him mostly stand around times. But when he does attack, he deals over 8,000 damage, easily enough to kill everything on the field in higher magnifications. One of the most annoying stages it is part of is Pitfall Zone, a drawn out rather boring endurance battle with it and the face. You will need to take out 5 of them before the assassin bears spawn and take you out. Luckily, you have lots of time. Corey introduces a brand new mechanic to the game, Waves. Wave is an additional attack after the first attack that can easily pierce through your army, and deal full damage to everything it hits. Every level of Wave has roughly 267 piercing range, which makes Corey's level 4 Wave hit up to 1067.5 range ahead of him. This can be very dangerous. Luckily, a common gacha unit that exists to take care of an Octopus Cat. Octopus has the Wave Blocker ability, which blocks the waves from hitting units behind it. A great ability for a tanker like him. Using him trivializes most wave stages in the game. Otherwise, it'll be a good idea to try and use more bulky units that won't get juggled by Corey's wave. Camille is likely the first super backline you will fight, with over 550 range. And yes, this is even higher than Master A, and a powerful attack that will make cats like Dragon Cat ineffective against them. Early on, it can once again be tanked quite easily, although in stages like Kuala Lumpur, where it gets proper support, it can be quite a hustle to deal with it. Luckily, Jellyfish Cat can snipe it from afar with its powerful wave. Ichna is a mid-ranger standing at 344 range with lots of damage, health, and knockbacks for the point you encounter him in the game. Ichnas are often stacked, making every cat that can't outrange them quite useless, but it should be manageable to chip them down with any backliner you have in store. They also are guaranteed to knock back units they hit. One of the most memorable stages they're in is Learn to Love, where you rush the 2 Ichnas at the start to try to get to Mina as fast as possible. These two are often run killers if you can chain them correctly. Dober PD is very similar to Corey as a Traitless waver, except it has a lot of bulk, but without a guaranteed chance to wave. Much like Corey, it has been completely power crept by Octopus. Although if you don't have Octopus, you can abuse Dober's low speed and spam range attackers with no meat shield to not accidentally trigger his wave attack. I'd like to mention the stage Dark Web, where he's paired with other wavers such as Berserkory and Toucan. This stage was the hardest stage the game had ever seen at one point due to the complete lack of wave immune units, but nowadays it is quite trivial if you have wave blockers and wave immune units. And yes, these units are only in the early game, but there's one more unit I want to discuss in the early game before we move on. You see, Rain D is a fast moving enemy with plenty of health. Due to its 20 knockbacks, it has basically no bulk and can be juggled with the right cats. Courier does a great job at that. Rain D has 300 range and deals a lot of damage, so it is a good idea to juggle him before he overwhelms you. Wave attackers later in the game also quite trivialize him, although he can be annoying in the forest beasts. Well, what does the mid and late game have to offer? You might ask. Let me show you. Let's get on to the mid game. Our roast actually shows up in the early game, but it's quite the mid game menace. In a poll that I recently did, over 650 people voted it as one of the most annoying enemies in the game. Actually, out of the 4 I chose, it was the most annoying. With its ridiculous pushing power and high HP, he can be extremely hard to deal with. There are so many stages he can be annoying, like Realm of Carnage, where he literally owns the stage, despite Henya being the boss. Taliban's Keeper, where he's paired with Henry
for even more an Inspector Parade, where it is being spammed over and over and over and over again. But I will instead choose to talk about Heaven's Oasis. Often said to be the hardest stage in Stories of Legends, it is paired with Winged Piggy, an enemy which also got 500 votes in the poll, to create a deadly combination that is sure to make you rage. Croakley is a late SOL enemy that has long distance and effective acts like a mini Queen Bee, with its guaranteed chance to slow for a whole minute, making everything slowed by it effectively dead. Croakley depends on his support, as ID makes him easily killable alone. But generally, it should be a good idea to snipe him with extreme range cats like Cyberpunk, or chip him with wave accounts and using slow immune units, making him quite irrelevant. In Forest of Irony, it is accompanied by Boar and Borfin, but luckily they can be freezed quite easily. This stage could be quite a threat when this 4ZL becomes a thing. Mr. Mole is much like Croakley, but instead of a whole minute of slow, it has a knockback, with a decent bit of health and damage, as well as being able to hit units up to 900 range away. He is very annoying to deal with. One of the most annoying stages Mole is in is Nadia's Tomb, where it is stacked to constantly knock back your cats. Dolphina is another ID Traitless enemy with powerful attack and a lot of health that is almost always seen in groups, with its only downside being his abnormally high knockback count of 30. His debot stage, No Return Fights, is where he and other Traitless enemies shine. It used to be the hardest stage, not only in SOL, but in the entire game, but luckily got power creep by cats like Haniwa that can easily stall this Traitless stage, or Courier Cat that can take advantage of Dolphina's 30 knockbacks. Henry is the final ID Traitless enemies in this video, and it has the ability to perma-freeze your units instead of knockbacking and slowing like others. Luckily, it has a huge blind spot, like the others, so it can be easily rushed in. But be careful with your timing, as you don't want your units to get stuck in its freeze. Speedy cats like Courier help plenty here. In Cabby and Skeeper, Henry gets his support from Arrows, creating another deadly and infuriating combination. And finally, the moment you've all been waiting for, the late game. Well, you see, Columnist Gallus is a Traitless behemoth variant of Chick-fil-A, with incredibly high HP, immunity to slow and weaken, most frequent and powerful attacks, as well as strengthen. He can be countered with units that can freeze Traitless due to not being immune to it, but that might not always work in the stages he's presented in. Another method I suggest is to rush him down with Hitman Cat, who is also great against wild doges, present in Ape's Lord Revenge, and Haniwa Cat, who can tank a hit at level 43. Well, good luck to the heroes to get to this far stages of the game. Speaking of wild doge, it is the next enemy on our list. Much like Aros, it is an early/mid-game enemy who is especially present in the endgame, due to his 200% magnification, making him insanely difficult to stop. Because he one-shots everything and has a chance to survive, anti-Traitless behemoth eggs like Copcat and previously mentioned Hitman are your only hope against this crazy beast. Mr. Mare is a late UL Traitless enemy that is like an offensive wall doge, with only 1 knockback and 1.25 million health, and decent damage that stacks up over time with her level 3 mini-waves. She's fortunately rushable with Hitman Cat due to its insane damage output. Elefante Papao is another great Traitless behemoth enemy with lots of health, higher damage, and range that allows it to outrange most of the common Lebon encounters. He can push insanely far just on his own, and when present with support like Hockey, Pokey, Forest, your only hope is to stall Niwa and Boulder and hope for the best. You might also want to consider Awakened Ores due to her high range to take this monster. Yes, this is probably one of the hardest enemies in the entire game, and definitely one of the hardest Traitless enemies. And anyways, if you guys enjoyed this video and stayed this far, make sure to subscribe and join our empire.
Oh, and by the way, before we get started with red enemies, we actually used an AI voice in the past, and that is why our next couple of trade videos will be done without any real voice, and a couple of different AI voices we experiment.
Red enemies of the first traded enemies introduced in the game. You can encounter them in the 10th stage event for RF Maldives. Unless you've been living under a rock, you would know that enemies with a trait can be countered by specific gets and abilities. For example, let's take Axe Get. The first unit you get with an ability against the trait. X-Cat has the strong against ability, which makes him deal 1.5 times more damage to all enemies, while only taking half damage from them. Note that with the Blood Food treasure obtained from Into the Future, this effect gets better against red enemies. But how do you actually maximize all these stats and get the best red killing cats in the game to clear any red stages? Well, I'm glad you asked. But before we start, it is important to mention that this is the first episode in an 11-part series, which will eventually cover every trick in the game. If you like this guide, make sure to subscribe to see the next one about floating enemies. Now, let's define red enemies. Most red enemies are heavily stat-based and do not rely on abilities. This means they can be very tanky, deal lots of damage, or just be regular peons. The red enemies that do rely on abilities, however, usually feature wave or surge attacks. However, there are some red enemies that don't fall into these stereotypes. Hangya, for example, does have an ability to weaken units and is more of a support enemy. Red enemies can also be stronger variants of the existing Traitless enemies. Examples include Cory and Berserkori, Mustard A and Professor A, and Snake and Ginger Snake. Now, let's get into the red enemies you should look out for. Boar is a very tanky enemy and requires proper mage healing. He is very similar to Bunbutt in nature. This enemy has lots of other traded variants, which is why he's important to keep in mind. Next on the list is Professor A. Professor A is a much stronger variant than Master A, with much higher stats and range, and new ability. He has a 20% chance to slow units with every hit. Your first encounter with him will likely be in the Manic Mohawk stage, and he can be countered with tanky units like Sushi Cat. Berserkori is a stronger version of Cory with wave attack that has much higher range and plenty of health. If you want to counter him, you should bring a wave look unit like Octopus Cat, or stall him with a tanky unit like Sushi Cat. Next up on the list, we have Cappy, a very interesting red enemy, and you'll see why very soon. She has an insane amount of damage, a chance to crit, and a high standing range. She's very easy to stall on her own due to a single attack, but if she's paired with the right enemies, she can be very dangerous. Next up we have, I'm not gonna pronounce that. This enemy is mentioned here because of a unit I'll get into in a bit. It has lots of HP and very high pushing power. Because of that, it is best to treat like a bull and continuously mage heal it while trying to keep its health using ranged attackers. Next up we have Haki, a red variant of Taki. Okay guys, who made up those names? Like, come on. Anyway, Paki has powerful long-range attacks that can one-shot lots of units, but it has an extremely large fight spot of 1200 range, so lots of enemies can get in it. You want to use fast units that can get in a blind spot without being attacked, and you want to time them correctly. You can also use long-distance units such as Cat. Last but definitely not least, we have Red Energy, one of the newest enemies in the game, only seen in the very late game. He is a variant of a Hyena and creates a guaranteed surge attack, in addition to a guaranteed knockback. I recommend you try to chain him up using Ibin the Wick in the Helmet, after you use another quick unit like Maglib to proc his surge attack. If he has frontliners defending him, chipping at his AP with long distance units is quite effective. Another quick unit is Courier Cat, which is one of the best units in the game, and he basically killed the trait, making most enemies that can outrage him quite useless against his insane DPS. And that was all, guys. Our next video is going to be about the floating types, so if you care about that, you might want to stick around. Hope you have a good day, and yeah, have a good one.
Floating enemies are the second special trait introduced in the game. The first floating enemy you will encounter is Moof. In the 38th stage of the Empire of Cats, Brazil. Unless you've been living under a rock, you would know that enemies with a trait can be countered by specific cats and abilities. Take Bishop Cat as an example, an early unit you can get with a counter ability against a trait. Bishop Cat has the ability to slow floating enemies for 4 seconds, which sets their movement speed to 1. With the Into the Future Sky Fruit Treasures, this duration increases by 20%. But before we start, it is important to mention this is the second episode in an 11-part series which will eventually cover every trait in the game. If you like this guide, make sure to subscribe to see the next one about alien enemies. Anyway, how do you best counter floating enemies? And see no trouble clearing stages such as these? Well, I'm glad you asked. Floating is more of a support trait, meaning there are plenty of enemies with floating and another trait. Take Calamari for example, a dangerous alien and floating backliner that can deal good damage and weaken your lineup with her ability. Due to her dual traits, you can counter her with anti-floating cats like Octopus Cat, that can tank her attacks with its resist ability, and anti-alien units like Cat Elite who acts as a good meat shield. But more on him in our next video. You can also bring in cats immune to her weakened ability, such as Cyborg Cat. Let's now talk about the most iconic floating enemy, Bonbon. The Bonbon family is an example of an enemy family, with every single variant carrying the floating variant except Relic Bonbon. Because of that, these enemies can be countered by units like Shaman Cat's true form, Sanzo Cat and Mare Cat's true form, Cameraman Cat. Sanzo is by far the best CC unit against floating enemies, due to his very consistent slow against floating, while Cameraman Cat is very spammable, has plenty of survivability, and deals lots of damage against the trait. The process to get these cats can be frustrating as they require a bit of luck. You will need lots of cat food. We recommend this video. If you have not heard about the Gold Pass, which will teach you how to get 900 cat food and a free rare ticket. One Cyclone in particular, the perfect Cyclone, can be cheesed with one cat only, Kotatsu Cat. His abilities to weaken and resist floating make him an anti-floating counterpart to Sushi Cat, and his true form allows him to be a very accessible wave blocker that will stay relevant for most of the game. One of the more threatening floating enemies is Brawlo. This is quite a gimmicky enemy that has insane amounts of DPS and lots of knockbacks, as well as plenty of backswing, meaning once you knock back it will attack back instantly. This enemy comes in groups and requires lots of meat shielding. But it is important to mention nuker units like Fishman Cat. With his massive damage versus floating, he can easily one-shot a Brawlo. Swimmer is even usable before true forming. Gobble has a very unique ability, Poison, which deals 8% of the unit's max HP, and therefore it's best to not try to tank it, but rush it down with units like Awakened Bahamut Cat and the previously mentioned Swimmer Cat, that you should now have true form for the increased range, stats, and movement speed. There are lots of other threatening floating enemies, but they don't appear in more than 1 or 2 stages, so they haven't made the cut for this video. And finally, this guide is Uberless, but anti-floating Ubers are very common, so you may use units like Windy and Catman. Alien enemies are the third trait introduced in the game, after Red and Floating. They are the first enemies you can't encounter in Empire of Cats. The first alien enemy you will encounter is Shibalian in the first stage of Into the Future, Japan. Unless you've been living under a rock, you would know that enemies with a trait can be countered by specific cats and abilities. Take Surfer Cat as an example, a super rare gacha unit you can get with the ability to freeze aliens for 4 seconds. With the Enigma Fruit treasures from Cats of the Cosmos, the duration increases. Before we start, it is important to mention this is the third part in an 11-part series covering every single trait in the game. If you like this guide, make sure to subscribe to see the next one about black enemies. But how do you maximize these stats and get the best alien killing cats to eliminate the most difficult alien enemies in the game? And who even are those endgame enemies? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let me take you through the 3 levels of alien difficulty in the game. Part 1, the early game. Generally, while Into the Future is difficult for some, it is only considered the early game for alien enemies. Shibalyan, also known as the Alien Dodge, is the first alien enemy introduced in the game. He is an alien peon that is mostly present in the start of stages as a way to give the player extra money, or it's used to tank hits for other enemies. He is usually not a big threat to most players. Next, Scizora is the alien variant of Kongru present in ITF Chapter 2. She has good base stats and can be a decent threat with high magnifications. More on magnifications in a future video. But she also has a long backswing that effectively freezes her in place after her attack, making it harder for her to push. Samager is the alien variant of Teacher Bear, and he can be quite dangerous with his ability to strengthen and gain 100% attack power at 50% HP. At higher magnifications he can pose quite a threat. Again, more on that in a future video, therefore it is best to try and overpower him with units that can outrange him like the dragons, or strip him of his defenses and brute force your way in. The final enemy I'll talk about in the early game that could be especially dangerous is Elder Sloth. He is yet another alien backliner who is a variant of the Sloth with more range, 6 times the speed, and the ability to knock back your units. It is a good idea to try and rush one down if it's alone using cats that can deal insane amounts of damage within a short period of time, such as Awakened Bahamut, or try to get crowd control units like Seafarer Cat and perma-freeze him to stop him from attacking. Seafarer's guaranteed chance to survive can ensure you get at least 2 on him. And with that, let's talk about the mid-game. Aliens are the only trait to have a special sub-trait version linked to them, Starred Aliens. This is where our middle game journey will begin. Starred aliens have treasures of their own in Cats of the Cosmos, and they do the same thing as the unstarred alien treasures, except there are even more of them. The most unique mechanic introduced in the alien middle game is the barrier mechanic. Most barriers can be broken with simple damage and act as an extra layer of HP. However, some barriers can only be broken with a special ability that only certain cats possess. One of the most infamous starred alien enemies is Starpun, with his annoying guaranteed chance to warp units, sending them 500 range back. Axolotl is a starred alien variant of Big Sal that has a surprisingly high standing range of 450 and a level 10 wave attack. He also has an incredibly long 262 second backswing, which makes him basically frozen in place if he gets to attack. It should be a good idea to go ahead and rush him with high DPS units like Awakened Bahamut, Can Cat, try to freeze him with Seafarer or block his wave with units like Octopus or Supercat. Alien variant of Crockley with a huge barrier that has a breaking point of 65,000, making barrier breakers a must for him. His HP pool is very low, so once the barrier is taken care of, Ribbo is as good as dead. You'll want to use short-range barrier breakers like Fencer Cat or Major Space Cat for him. Finally, we have Mesocosmocyclone. Wait, that's his dad, I mean this guy. A peon-style unit with insane amounts of DPS due to it being a cyclone, and a chance to warp units 150 range forward. Due to its really low range, cats with status effects like Psycho Cat can nullify it effectively. And finally we have the Endgame. While not a lot of them, the Endgame alien enemies are very deadly. They don't have a specific chapter or subunit, but they appear in many Endgame stages, such as Uncanny Legends and even Zero Legends. Suede Pidgeicus is a very unheard of enemy as he appears in very late stages of the game. He is not only alien but also behemoth and serves as a familiar enemy to Elizabeth the Elvieth, 56th, but without the wave attacks. He has nearly 1 mHP at base magnification, but it can be stalled quite easily and slayed with behemoth slayers like Courier Cat and Catarzan. Crustaceous Scissorex is an alien and behemoth variant of Helmet Crab, who is very tanky with 1.4 mHP and over 37k damage per hit. One of his attacks has a reach of 600 range, which makes him very hard to deal with. But his attack rate is quite slow, so tanky units like Soap Cat, who is similar to an anti-alien Sushi Cat, work wonders against him. Finally, as a bonus enemy, Overlord Wan Wan is a starred alien variant of King Wawa that poses the very dangerous ability to warp units for 66.6 seconds. Yes, you heard that right, 66.6 seconds. keeping them locked out of the game and clogging the cat limit, which is especially bad considering the stage you encounter him has a cat limit of only 10. Catalite with his warp immune serves once again as a great option, as well as other cheap nuker units like Slime and Can. And with that our journey about aliens ends. But this is just the beginning of the terrifying enemies battle cats have to present. Make sure to watch the next one about black enemies.
Black enemies are the fourth type of enemies introduced. One of the stages they can be encountered is in Into the Future, Chapter 1 Thailand. Unless you've been living under a rock, you would know that enemies with a trait can be countered by specific cats and abilities. Take Weightlifter Cat as an example, a super rare gacha unit you can get with the massive damage ability against black enemies, which allows him to deal 3x the damage to them. But some black enemies are so frightening even the strongest black counters do not stand a chance. Who are these enemies though? And what cats should you get to eliminate them? Well, I'm glad you asked. But before we start, it is important to mention this is the fourth part in an 11-part series discussing every single trait in the game. If you like this type of content, make sure to subscribe to see the next one about angels, or watch the previous ones already released. Some of the last enemies I will discuss might just be the most deadly enemies in the entire game, especially the last one. But before we jump to that, we have to discuss the early game. So what is the early game, you might ask? A lot of players would say it might be the entire Empire of Cats, or maybe just Empire of Cats Chapter 1. But compared to the amount of content the game has, the early game lasts up until you defeat Raging Bahamut in Into the Future Chapter 3. The first two major black enemies you will encounter are Doge Dark and Shadow Boxer K, who are quite similar to each other. Both variants of existing enemies, like many black enemies, have plenty of knockbacks and plenty of damage, and also give lots of cash upon killing them. Doge Dark is typically used as a peon to give the player money for the stage, while Shadow Boxer K takes an offensive role and is seen as an enemy with a very high pushing power. You can attempt to stall him and chip at his health pool with ranged attackers, as his big amount of knockbacks gives you some leeway. Next we have Dark Otter, who is one of the first enemies to break the black enemy formula, being a tanky unit with not many knockbacks, and being quite average with their cash granted. But they keep the immense attack power black enemies hold, and are often spammed to create immovable walls. Lenoir takes on the backliner role, being a variant of LeBlanc and acting as a backliner who could take a hit and also strike hard. These enemies I just mentioned all complement themselves quite well. Therefore, it's good to use more general black counters against them, such as Pizza Cat. Pizza Cat has plenty of attack power and has stats usable even outside black enemies, which makes his 4x attack power shred them easily. With his talents, he gets access to a level 2 wave, allowing him to even snipe Lenoir and kill it from afar. I am not going to discuss every early game black enemy, as I want to show you guys the real enemies you should fear, so with that let's move on to some of them who appear in the mid-game. By now, you should already be done with Into the Future and be well on your way through CoDC, and black enemies have adjusted accordingly, with a couple of additions to their roster. One of the most important enemies in the mid-game is Razorback, being a black variant to Boar, who is effectively Shadow Boxer K on steroids, having insanely high pushing power. It was designed to be nearly unstoppable without proper crowd control, therefore the best answer to him is Bomber Cat. Bomber Cat is a cat obtainable through an Easter egg in the game, who gets a true form after Into the Future Chapter 3, allowing it to freeze blacks with a 100% chance. Similar to iCat, and he proves to be an excellent answer to Razorback, as just 2 are needed to freeze him permanently. But Razorback will often be supported by units like Tacky. Who is Tacky? Well, he is a black variant of Hacky featuring a damaging long-distance attack that he can spam from afar. While the dude is super threatening and seems unstoppable at first, he has a blind spot, which allows your anti-black units to get in without him being able to do anything about it. In addition, if you have any units that can outrange even it, like Cyberpunk Cat, that can chip it over time, that can be very beneficial to you. Next we have Toucan, a red, black enemy with a high damaging wave attacker, who can be a big threat if you don't deal with him correctly. Lucky for you, Octopus Cat can block his powerful waves while you use high damaging anti-black cats to quickly take care of him. And finally we have a unit who can be a threat at any point of the game, but seen in the mid-game. Assassin Bear, an enemy typically reserved as a sort of time gate to stop one from taking too long on the stage. It is practically unbeatable with its insane damage and range. The only good answer to it is the Cat Cannon, which can easily take care of it. Without it, you simply lose. Okay, but all these seem manageable so far? Even Assassin Bear is just one cat cannon away from dying. But this is not going to be the case as we move on to the endgame. Well, we're finally here. You're finally ready to meet the most terrifying Battle Cat's black enemies and see some of the monstrosities Battle Cats really have to present. Starting out, we have Kasaurian Dark Joe as a black, behemoth variant of Kasaurian Hydro who cannot be taken out easily with Courier like previous enemies, although Courier does help immensely against it. With his massive 2 million health pool and 12.6 kbps, he can be a terrifying threat to deal with. Cats like Heavy Assault Circa A.T., Dark Laser, and Pizza Cat can be great against him if you're willing to put in your MP to get their talents, but even them alone cannot withstand this monstrosity. You can attempt to stall him with a unit like Gas Mask Cat, who was practically made to counter Dark Joe Dot, but the only way to really beat this guy is using a lot of skill and combining your cat's power together. Raging Gory is a variant of the Gory Black we talked about earlier, but this time it has Behemoth as a trait too. His main selling point is his immunity to freeze, so simple tricks like Bomb Cat do not work anymore. One way to try and counter him is with the same cats the regular Gory can. You just need to be more careful and not spam units like before. But again, stages like these are not for everyone to beat, but that's not all black enemies have to offer. You see, Dark Dober is a black, Sage variant of Dober PD, being one of the newest and perhaps even the most threatening enemy in the entire game, with increased health, DPS, an Omni Strike reaching up to 350 range and a guaranteed chance to weaken units to 25% of their original attack stat, with added mini-waves to transfer the effect more effectively. And if you are still not convinced just due to being a Sage, he gets resistances to all debuffs given by cats without Sage Slayer. All previous tricks that carried you in the mid-game do not help here. Bomber Cat is close to useless against him. Apart from that, I wish prayers to the brave players who encounter this beast. While the journey about black enemies ends, this is just the beginning of the terrifying enemies Battle Cats have to present. Just wait until you watch the Angel trait video next week. Angel enemies are the fifth type of enemies introduced in the game. The first encounter with angel enemies is in Into the Future Chapter 1, Madagascar, with the first angel enemy being an angel doge, also known as Gabriel. Unless you've been living under a rock, you should know that enemies with a trait can be countered by specific cats and abilities. Take Rocker Cat as an example, a rare gacha cat with the ability to resist damage, which allows him to have 4 times more HP against angel enemies. Angel is the most dangerous trait we have discussed so far, with him being buffed to insane amounts that no cat alive can stand a chance. Who are the most endgame enemies though? And how can such an unstoppable trait be defeated? Well, I'm glad you asked. But before we start, it is important to mention this is the 5th part in an 11-part series discussing every single trait in the game. I want to create the biggest Battle Cats community for guides like these, so make sure to subscribe to join the Empire and watch our next video about metal enemies. You can also watch the entire 11-part series on our channel starting from red enemies. Some of the enemies I will discuss at the end of this video might just be the most threatening enemies the game has to offer. But before we get there, we have to start in the early game. What is the early game? While some may think it's the entirety of Empire of Cats, it is very wrong. You see, compared to the amount of content the game has, the early game lasts all the way until the end of Into the Future Chapter 3. Gabriel is the first and most basic angel enemy you will encounter in the early game. He is very similar to the Black Doge, except it has lower damage and range, which it trades for area attack, more HP, and movement speed. Compared to Doge Dark, it also gives less money per kill, but it is still considered to be quite a weak peon you can take care of easily. One of the best anti-angel cats is Ramen Cat, the true form of Rocker Cat, that has immense stats against angels, and is in fact the reason they became so overpowered in the first place. But that's a story for another time. Just keep his name in mind, he'll be featured in this video a lot. Even though this enemy is in the early game section, it is no joke. Even in later parts of the game due to it often being buffed, Angelic Gory, compared to Black Gory, has a lot more health, attack, and DPS, with fewer knockbacks and a trait with much less accessible power creep. Once again, a great unit to use is Ramen to tank his attacks, and Sanzo Cat makes a comeback here, due to his talent that allows him to target angels. It might be a small investment, but it's one of the best talents in the game. because it allows angels to be much easier to handle. In case you don't have access to talents yet, you can use more general crowd control units like Ururu Cat, or even try an anti-angel super rare like Juliet. Our next enemy is Angelic Sleipnir, another infamous angel that is well known because of his high pushing power and annoying knockback ability. He's best countered by using cats that outrange him to damage him from afar, and using meat shields to stall him, like Ramen Cat, who has a knockback-resistant talent specifically made for Sleipnir, although it's not needed. Sanzo Cat and Juliet won't be effective here due to his low range and survivability, but you may keep on using Ururu to try and knock him back. The final enemy for the early game is Sunfish Jones, a huge fish that acts as a generic backup in most stages. However, his 1.2 million health pool is nothing to scoff at. Make sure you're careful while dealing with it and try to not push too hard, else you might lose all your units. Taking it down is not too big of a problem since it's meant to be supported, but using units that have a decent amount of range as well as using tanky meat shields such as, you guessed it, Ramen should do the job. So yes, these are just the early game angels and they're still terrifying as heck. Now that we're done with this warm-up, let's see what the mid and end game has to present. The mid game is usually considered to be until the end of Cats of the Cosmos 3, which most players have failed to complete. But the brave souls who completed this part of the game are aware of the dangerous angel enemies it has to present. Kala Maria is an angel variant of Calamari who you might remember from our previous videos. However, this enemy is nothing like Calamari, with its completely insane 108k damage dealt per hit, and her multi-hit, which makes her have 3 attacks, each dealing 36k damage. Luckily, these are single target attacks. This enemy is one which Ramen Cat actually does not work well on, making it harder to use on pure angel stages that have a Kala Maria, but he's still broken. Due to Kala having a single target attack, even with her multi-hit, spamming tons of meat shields could do the job. Borofim is an angel variant of Boar that is quite similar to Razorback, with 1.4 million health and over 48,000 DPS. Fortunately, he has 5 knockbacks to stop him from pushing so hard. Sanzo Cat is amazing here as well with his angel targeting talent, and if you still don't have it, Juliet or Thaumaturge are very effective as well. Ramen can tank a couple hits from him, which makes him great for stalling, but even with all these great counters, this guy is not a joke at all. Winged Pig is our final enemy for the mid-game section, and by far one of the most annoying. She can dramatically weaken your units and make your attackers irrelevant. Paired with 800k health and her being supported by other units, she can be very threatening to the average player. A great counter to her is Cyborg Cat, as she can outrange her and is immune to weaken. Make sure to stall her with high HP meat shields like Ramen Cat.
Okay, Mr. Cat, these enemies still seem somewhat manageable if you know what you're doing.
That might be true, but I promise you, this is not going to be the case as we move on to the endgame. Starting up, we have Saint Dober, who is an angel variant of Dober Page D. He trades the wave for surge attacks and has 1.8 million horsepower with 13,000 DPS. Ranged attackers are crucial against Dober, since his surge and Omnistrike can delete attackers that don't have good range. The only way I would recommend you face this monstrosity if you want any chance to tell the story is with talented Sanzo, Juliet, and Mushroom. Surge immune units are also very important for this. Next up, we have Great Angel Chibimo, who is an angel and Colossus enemy acting like a mini Clynal and Ladle. While he has low health, he can be insanely scary because of his debuffing capabilities. This house-sized enemy is in a way similar to Taki, as he has a blind spot in which you can get fast units like Kinhin into, or abuse his low damage counts and chip at him with Nala or Housewife. By now you should have Mushroom Cat, who is basically Courier but with angel targeting, so he could do some serious job here. Rajikong is basically Rajin Gori on steroids, featuring 3x the HP, an Omni Strike with 50 piercing range, immunity to waves and surges, and a chance to create a level 2 wave. Ramen Cat stands absolutely no chance here, even he cannot overpower this beast. If you want even the slightest chance of success here, you will be required to bring other crowd control options like Thaumaturge Cat to weaken him, although she isn't very reliable, and talented Fiend Cat to knock him back. This enemy is so deadly that Mushroom Cat was made to counter Rajikong, and if you even want to think about defeating such a man, he should always be used. Enemies like these are not made for anyone, and I send serious prayers to the souls who encounter such. But wait, There is an enemy even more terrifying and powerful than this beast who is truly unstoppable. This enemy will be discussed in my Metal Enemies video releasing this Monday. Metal enemies are the sixth type of enemies introduced in the game. Your first encounter with metal enemies will most likely be Into the Future Chapter 1 Greece, with the first metal enemy being a metal hippo. Unless you've been living under a rock, you should know that enemies with a trait can be countered by specific cats and abilities. But you see, metal enemies are not like any type. Every metal enemy has an ability that makes it take only 1 damage from every hit they take unless it is a critical hit. The average Battle Cats player will not experience many metal enemies and they won't be such a threat until the mid and late game. But who are these mysterious endgame enemies? And how can such an intricate trait be defeated? Well, I'm glad you asked. But before we start, it is important to mention this is the 6th part in an 11-part series discussing every single trait in the game. I appreciate the huge amount of support lately, and we are on the way to creating the biggest Battle Cats community for guides like these, so make sure to subscribe to join the empire. But anyways, let's discuss the most interesting trait in the game. I hope you noticed by now that metal enemies aren't like any enemy. There are actually only 9 main metal enemies you will experience throughout the game. So let's start at the beginning. The early game, which may sound incredibly low, but metal enemies have the metal ability, which makes them take only 1 damage from nearly every attack. That means a level 50 talented can and a level 1 tank cat deal the exact same damage against metal enemies. There are 3 ways to counter the ability. 1. Metal Killers. As of V13.5, only 1 cat has this ability, Kyuga's Ultra form. Every hit will take away 12% of a metal enemy's current HP, which is a lot considering Kyuga is spammable. 2. Water Blast Cannon works about the same as Metal Killer, except it's a cat cannon. And most important of all, critical hits. Critical hits are by far the most popular way to kill metal enemies. Crits double the hit's damage and ignore the metal ability, dealing full damage to metals. A level 30 untalented Catasaurus deals over 3600 damage to metals upon critting, easily enough to take out the metal hippo. However, these units tend to have poor stats outside of metals, meaning you can't use them optimally in other stages. Sure, you can use units who have great stats and can crit, such as Talented Cameraman, Island Cat and its variants, or even Gao if you happen to own him. But these units suffer from very low crit chance, making them very unreliable on metal stages. Due to critical hits, metal enemies are very RNG based, and basically require 1 or multiple critters to be a part of your lineup. If we move a little forward, we may encounter the next stage featuring metal enemies as RNG walls that force you to base your lineup on them. Welcome to March to Death. This stage is very well known for its insane RNG, and once again we see the well-known formula. An otherwise easily beatable backliner shielded by metals, Dabu is constantly supported by metals, making him very annoying to chip down. Fortunately, there are some cats that don't require RNG to crit, mainly Waitress Cat and Crazed Moniko. However, these units have flaws, such as Waitress Cat having a very long attack animation, and Moniko only being able to crit on the last hit of her multi-hit, making her also very prone to missing her target. Thankfully, the stage is much easier nowadays, with cats like Shigum Cat to stall and Chip Dabu. But it is still worth to keep in mind because of the sheer pain metals cause in this stage. Later on, there are a couple more stages with metal enemies. You have Clash of Steel from Growing Strange, requiring you to have critters in your original lineup, and also one of the rare cases where a stage had to get nerfed by Ponos. Subchapters like All 33, Diver's City, where every stage has metals in it, making every stage have some factor of RNG in it. The final and perhaps deadliest stage one would like to discuss is Metallic Metaverse, a zombie metal stage featuring pure gold art, OSTS, which are event enemies that appear in ZL. Luckily, these are very easily stallable and killable, which allows you to focus on the zombies in the stage. And again, I send serious prayers to the souls who encounter such stages. But wait, there are stages much more terrifying and deadly than this last one, who are truly unbeatable. We'll be discussing these stages in my Zombies Enemies video releasing next week. Zombie enemies are the 7th type of enemies introduced in the game. Due to them being newer than the other traits we've covered here, being introduced in version 5.6 with zombie outbreaks, it takes a while for them to appear in Stories of Legends, and they cannot be encountered in Empire of Cats, Into the Future, are cats of the cosmos. Take Volter Cat as an example of an anti-zombie unit. A gacha super rare with the ability to slow zombies for 4.8 seconds. 5 with the antimatter fruit, as well as zombie killer. Her true form increases the slow duration to 5 seconds, or 6 seconds with the antimatter fruit. Zombie outbreaks are much harder versions of existing stages in story mode chapters that are full of zombie enemies, and clearing them rewards the player with 10 cat food. Clearing the zombie outbreak in every stage of a chapter rewards the player with 50 max energy, making them very worthwhile to do. Zombie outbreaks can't be redone, and the stage an outbreak will be active in is completely random, except the moon is always saved for last. Zombies have a couple of unique properties as enemies. They can burrow upon encountering a cat unit and be unkillable until they go up again. Some zombies have one burrow, but others have plenty. If you have the Holy Blast cat cannon, you can unburrow burrowed zombies and deal lots of damage to them, making it a very useful cannon. Zombies can also revive once killed and get 50 or 100% of their HP back. Some even have infinite revives. Cats who possess the zombie killer ability may stop the zombie from reviving and kill it, signified by a sound effect and a blue dot near the zombie. Let's start with Zhang Ru. He serves as a very annoying peon with high amounts of DPS, with a long burrow distance of 1125 range, meaning she will unburrow herself 1125 range from the original burrow location. Compared to Shadowboxer K, she has only 2 knockbacks as opposed to 10, meaning she can be harder to stop. Her range also stops notable zombie counters such as Lil Flying Cat to be used. Early on you could expect her to be threatening in the outbreaks she shows up in, but there are stages where she proves to be a difficult peon, such as N1 Grand Prix, where the restriction and the supporting boss help her shine and often make her a run-ender. Or Speechless Tongues, a late ult stage featuring plenty of ultra-buffed aliens with 300% Zhang Rus. But before we move on the rest of the video, we want to build the largest Battle Cats community. So every bit of support helps us grow and make bigger and better videos for you guys, so don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Now back to the video. Another peon I'd like to mention is Zeroko, with not too much health but great DPS, making it shred whatever it gets to attack. Luckily, it has a single attack so it can die to meet shield spam. One stage where it shows its annoyance is Pasta Desert, an early Uncanny Legend stage featuring it with an incredibly buffed Master A, making the stage very tedious. The infinite Zerokos and Relic Doges can be very annoying support while you have to chip down the Master A. By now you might have realized zombies tend to have a high damage output, but they're also incredibly annoying with their reviving and burrowing, especially if you don't have a zombie killer present. But you might ask yourself, what happens when zombies stop being peons and start being the main enemies present in a stage? The answer is Lord Gravy. Lord Gravy has a decent amount of HP, with no burrows, but it revives with 100% of its HP, making it effectively twice as tanky without a zombie killer. Zombies tend to be melee units, so Lord Gravy's 250 range is surprisingly high and may make some zombie counters not as good against him. One stage where you can truly see his power is Nautilus Tomb, where Lord Gravy is used as a wall with its 2 million effective HP at 300% magnification to cover for Mr. Moles that continuously knock back your units and chip them over time, making for a very annoying stage. Next up we have one of the most infuriating enemies in the entire game, Cadaver Bear. This guy terrorizes every stage it appears at with. He has very high 360 range for a zombie, with very high damage, threatening burrows and 100% HP revives. Lil Cyclone is yet another Lil version of a Cyclone that can prove itself to be extremely annoying. It takes a surprisingly different role from the other Cyclones, and instead of being a DPS powerhouse, it acts as a wall to try and separate your army. Once he burrows, he can do that quite effectively with its 300,000 health at base magnification. Luckily, his damage is stupidly low, therefore he's just an annoying addition to stages instead of a really dangerous threat. One stage where he is featured, as well as the other enemies I have so far mentioned, is Necro Frontier, an Enigma Orb farming stage, pick of Enigma Orb. The combination of Cadaver Bear, Cyclone, and Lord Gravy can make this stage seem quite deadly, but luckily every enemy in this stage is a zombie, meaning you can bring a specialized anti-zombie lineup featuring cats like Shigung, who's an anti-zombie ramen, Housewife as a great damage dealer and crowd controller, talented Psycho Cat in order to outrange Cadaver, and Lil Flying, Cadaver Bear Cat, or any other anti-zombie units you have. The combination of all these should lead you to a victory. Dreadboar is a zombie variant of boar that holds the same high pushing power and health most boar variants hold, except he has burrows and revives, making him even more dangerous. One of the stages that show his true potential is Brave Dog's Bone, featuring 7 dreads with berserkories and coffin zodges as support. Finally, let's mention Coffin Zoj, a zombie variant of Wall Doge with infinite revives, meaning it can live on forever unless you zombie kill it, and no burrows, making it just another boring and beefy wall that will annoy you. Now that we're done covering the annoying monstrosities of the mid-game and the endgame, let's move on to the endgame exclusive zombies. Zappy is a zombie variant of Cappy featuring warps, a 50% HP revive, a faster attack rate, faster movement speed and immunity to waves and surges, but with weaker stats compared to Cappy and no burrows. Much like Cappy, a single Zappy is harmless, but if it's stacked up in a group where it has the right support, it could become very dangerous. One stage where Zappy has the support it needs is Top Dog, Everlord Wanwan's Revenge stage. The main threat in the stage is the Zappies, with Wanwan, Gobble, and Pigeon the Sable supporting it. Gobble and Wanwan especially are annoying, with Gobble being out of reach because of the coffin zodges present and Wanwan being the classic backliner stopping you from pushing too hard. Lofai forms Engaburu is a zombie, floating variant of Henry, featuring relatively low damage and range with a decent amount of HP, but has a 75% chance to activate a mini surge and is guaranteed to slow units. Luckily, by the time you get to encounter it, you'll already have various counters to it, such as Cat Chief, who can deal 10x damage to it, or even just spamming Courier due to it also being a behemoth. In fact, its introductory stage in Zero Legends is basically just completely irrelevant due to Courier. This enemy may be featured in harder stages going forward, so keep an eye on him. Formicity and Ariant falls off into the same shoes as Engaburu, as a zombie behemoth enemy that is not too relevant due to it appearing very late into the game, meaning you probably have great counters for it in stock. It can deal insanely large amounts of damage, and a hit from him could be a run-ender. But his lacking survivability makes very easy to get rid of, and even if he does get to attack, his long time between attacks makes him very likely to not attack again. But there's an even scarier trait that we will talk about next Sunday, so stay tuned.
Relic is the second to last trait to be introduced in Battle Cats, being introduced in the second saga of Legend stages, Uncanny Legends. Due to Relics being a trait that appears much later in the game, most Relic enemies have uber high stats from the get-go. An example is Relic Doge having over 150k HP. Yeah, you heard that right, 150k HP for a Doge, and 24k damage per hit, only at 100% magnification. And again, I appreciate the insane amount of support lately. I mean, we literally hit 3k subs in the last 2 months, and promise we will build the biggest Battle Cats community to ever exist, to bring the game back to its prime. So make sure to subscribe to help this goal. So yeah, Relic enemies are probably the most interesting and difficult trait we've discussed so far, and that is why this video is so long, as there is much to discuss. And not only that, but Relics also have a brand new ability with them, Curse. You see, Curse is an ability that Relics possess, which will strip your cats of any abilities they have for a set amount of time. For example, in stage Albiabug, Queen V serves as the boss and can weaken your cats for a very long amount of time, which is very relevant when it comes to the Professor A's in the stage. Rogue can stall them behind and weaken them easily, unless it's stuck by Queen V's curse, which makes it useless. With that out of the way, let's get with the early game relics you will meet. And yeah, there are so many horrifying relics I will mention in the video, especially at the end, that even one of the most endgame traits deserves its own early game section. Starting off, we have Old Horn. He's a very beefy relic variant of One Horn, with over 2.4 million HP at 100% magnification, as well as over 30k DPS, but he has a slow movement speed and low attack range. In any pass, his Diva stage is the only thing that appears in the stage, making it quite easy to just stack DPS on it, but it has opportunities to shine, such as Prelog Karun, where his beefy HP numbers make him the main threat of the stage. When accompanied by Evil Emperor Cat, this stage is also very important to beat, as it is the key behind unlocking Stone/Boulder Cat. An excellent meat shield with great properties, His latest Legend Stages appearance in Pointed Lakestone is quite interesting one, because it being accompanied by Dark Dober makes it tank millions of HP for it, but also serves as a stepping stone for wave attackers like Pizza and Dark Laser. The stage also requires Weaken Immune units due to Dark Dober's Weaken ability, else it will take ages. Next up, in the early game we have Sir Rel is an infuriating relic peon, hated by many due to its having great damage and higher speed than its Traitless counterpart. It luckily only has 50k HP at 100% magnification, but it can still murder anything in its path if given a chance. Slupsticks is an excellent counter against it, much like it is against Oldhorn, because it can deal great damage and continuously knocks it back. In its first appearance in Uncanny Legends, it is accompanied by boars and Nemi boars, making for a stage with high pushing power that can luckily be stopped with crowd control cats like iCat and Sea Surfer, and Sir Rels can be stopped by Slapsticks. However, in Kuala Lumpur, especially on higher star difficulties, it is very much a threat, with Camille and Reynard supporting it being spammed so frequently. That stage is basically very cheap heavy due to the extreme amount of Sir Seals being spawned. With good LD Ubers, this can be accomplished much more easily. His latest appearance in Putrid Prison is not really a difficult one, but it's just a peon spam stage. If you have high DPS peon clearing units like Can, you will win quite easily. And with that out of the way, we have Autumn is a relic floating moth variant featuring Omni Strike reaching up to 440 range, allowing it to outrange lots of common non-Uber units. He also has a fairly high 800k HP, as well as 11k damage per hit, which is not too bad, and the Obliterator Curse nearly every relic has, but only for 2 seconds. Because of Awesome having the floating trait, you can rush it quite easily when it's on its own, with cats like Fishman Cat. Awesome does have a curse, but the duration is not long enough to save it from its Fishman demise. And even if Fishman is not available, there's always long range options like Oron and most Ubers similar to it, or Cyberpunk to take care of the job. In its Diva stage, it is accompanied by various angels, and that is where Curse shows how deadly it can be, since it can strip your Brahmin cats of their angel immunity and take them just as useless as any other Michio. Therefore, it is best to bring extra CC to the stage that is preferably not hit by Autumn. In Unmoving Conveyor, it is the main threat and should be taken care of as fast as possible to make sure it won't stack and become too much to handle. Fishmen are great for taking quick care of that in the stage. In its latest appearance, 1+2 equals 4, it is simply one of the many floating enemies in the stage, but a big threat because its only curse ability. Killing it quickly is also the key to make the stage much easier, because it is a cache-tight stage, despite being full of enemies in a trait, known for being plentiful in it. Loris is a relic variant of Limor that serves as a long-range depuffer with 360k health, but only 6000 damage per hit at base magnification. Later on, it may arrive buffed at 150%, which is a decent buff due to its offensive capabilities, but it's still not enough to make it really a threat on its own, especially because of LD spanning 500 to 800 range. However, its curse duration is the same as his attack speed, so it can perma-curse your cats quite easily if given a chance, making it very annoying. In Young Cuttlefish, his Diva stage, there are many other traded enemies it is accompanied with in the stage, such as Dark Otter and Zeke. These allow Loris to easily stack, therefore the stage should be rushed, else it might become too big of a hassle. It also appears in Pitfall Academy, a stage that signifies buff given to relics peons and Loris, buffing them from 100 to 150 magnifications at base. In this stage, it is accompanied by most Rel and Crockley. The main difficulty of the stage comes from getting your units inside Crockley's blind spot while dealing with Emmos and Loris. Another MO spawns later on, but you're likely to be fine by that point. His latest appearance in Muddy Fjord is a remake of the future Chapter 2 Moon stage, with Fallen Bears and Valkyrie pushing and keeping you in place, and Loris cursing your backline. A deadly combination is created. Once you take out Fallen Bears, things get more manageable. Loki is a relic/floating variant of the face with 1.1 million HP and a fairly low 6000 damage per hit, but with 500 range and whopping 10 seconds of curse, which hits with 1.37 seconds stack frequently, makes for 730 curse per uptime. That means their units will definitely be perma-cursed when they hit him. Luckily, he has an extremely low movement speed, like the face, and he still doesn't deal much damage. Not to mention, curse immune units exist. In his Diva stage, Languid Lakeside, he's accompanied by your Cerebelled as well as some of the boars. If Loki gets the chance to curse your anti-red cats, it can get very dangerous and allow boars to push and overpower you. So make sure you watch out for that. Besides that, it really isn't the hardest stage in the world though. It's also part of a very funny stage in UL19, a subchapter known for gimmicky stages. In a nighttime lore, a stage with 5 variants of face, which comes out on a base hit. Because nothing spawns until the base is hit, it is quite easy to just stall for max money and lure out the face variants to your base. Finally, his latest appearance is in Crag of Month Crystal, where he appears as a support boss to the newly introduced Mini Angel Cycle. Mini Angel Cycle is the main threat of the stage, but luckily, most of the units that deal with it, and it surge quite well with most UL legends. Also great against Loki himself, so he isn't really an issue in that stage. Mr. Puffington is a relic enemy that works similar to Brawlo, with its high attack damage and 10 seconds of backswing, where he just sits in place and does nothing. This high backswing makes him immediately rush at your units and deal 30k damage to them. A mechanic is clearly built on considering his 400 knockbacks and Omni Strike, reaching up to 350 range. Due to this, it is the best not to damage him with weak units. Even a level 30 Manic Eraser can knock it back in 10 hits. In addition, his curse uptime is nearly 100%. Uninterrupted, it can very easily go higher than that due to the enemy's nature. His Diva stage is not only Spring Reception, where he's accompanied by angel enemies and peons, such as Sir Relic, Sunfish Jones, and Chick-fil-A. You need to deal with other threats in this stage while trying to avoid unnecessary attacks on Puffington that will make him destroy your front line, unless for some reason you have ID this early into UL, in which case she'll be able to about 2-shot him at level 40. In Confront the Tyrant, there are 8 Puffington in total, although 5 of them appear as a time gate to punish the player for taking too long on the stage, and 2 of them are meant to be stalled for cash, because the stage is very cash dry due to there being no peon. The final one spawns along Cly 1 and Bun Bun on base hit. This stage requires some timing with ID to take care of the Puffington that spawns. On base hit, she won't hit the Bun Bun by accident and leave the Puffington alive. This can be accomplished with Thunderbolt. Puffington's latest appearance is in Brown Scrap, where he's supporting Metal Cyclones, which makes it slightly harder to try and crit down. But there are still excellent choices here, such as Curry and Soba Cat, which makes the stage gimmick not work so well. Now we're approaching some of the more late game Relics enemies, and I want to mention some units that will completely carry you and are a must in order to deal with these enemies. One of the most important ones being a special legend unit. ID is obtainable from completing SOL at 4-star difficulty, and she serves as an alternative Bahamut that has a massive damage against relics. She's not 100% required for Uncanny Legends and relics, but definitely can make stuff a lot easier for you. She's also assumed to get true form very soon, when we get the final 2 subchapters of UL at star 4 difficulty. So, if you made it this far into the video, I'd like to hear your suggestions for a true form in the comments below. Radio, a rare cat, is also an important unit that can be obtained from the rare capsule. It is a crowd control with a 30% chance to slow blacks. When talented, Radio gains the relic targeting, which makes it very effective in early relic stages, such as an Ancient Curse and Typhon Nemo. Modern Cat is also a rare cat that is dropped from the Relic Cyclone stage. Typhon Nemo is a meat shield that has a resist against relics and metals. True form Modern Cat turns into Future Cat and turns the resist to insanely resist, making it a more effective meat shield against relics and metals due to it having higher stats, but it doesn't change its effectiveness generally or in mixed stages too much. It is quite crucial for an Ancient Curse. Notably, a level 31 Modern Cat can survive 4 hits from a Relic Bun Bun. That's very crazy. Slapsticks are a super rare cat that can be obtained from super rare capsule. It is spammable attacker similar to cats like Pizza Cat, Cyber Cat, and Housewife Cat, although it does not have an LD. When true form, they gain strong against relics as well as the curse immunity, making them a very effective unit throughout all of Uncanny Legends to deal with relic enemies. However,
their true form can prove to be quite hard to get, due to its requiring an elder fruit. Okay, perfect. Now you're truly ready to hear about the endgame relics and see what this trait really has to offer. And just in general, what Battlecat's endgame is really all about. Starting off, we have Golden Sunfish, a late UL relic floating variant of Sunfish Jones. It has a 3-part multi-hit covering the ranges 100 to 650 and 650 to 1500, and also 1500 to 1450. If that's not enough, it has 1.8 million HP and 30k damage per hit. Although, due to its multi-shot stacking with itself, means that your units will either take 19.6k, 9.8k, or a measly 2450 damage, depending on their rank. It can also freeze units for 2 seconds and curse them for 8 seconds, with an attack frequency of 9.27 seconds. Do note that attackers only happen in its first hit though, so Cat's 650 range and beyond won't be affected. Duron is quite effective against it, mainly due to its freeze, allowing you to abuse its floating trait and deal damage to it, Ancient Sea Blues. However, the enemies present won't really be able to push their way to your base unless Golem connects to it and chips it over time, meaning you should win eventually by chipping down the sloth and killing the jackrabbits with Courier. Vodka and Kanken can do great damage to Sunfish itself, when available though. One tough stage in late UL, with the very deadly combination of zombies plus Golem Sunfish, Zappy and Zengru can be very dangerous on their own. But with Golem taking space on the battlefield, you create one very dangerous and tedious stage. Golem Sunfish, latest appearance in 1+2 = Tor, shows its strength as a very annoying enemy that can make it harder for you to deal with the other threats on the stage, and can also sweep your front line very easily if you end up close to it. Honey 1-1 is a relic enemy that acts as a sort of wall with 300k HP at base magnification and a single target, except that it deals over 20k damage per hit, with 4k mini wave damage that can also knock back, freeze, weaken, slow, and curse units at a 20% chance per hit per each ability, making it a very unpredictable enemy. Units that can block waves, like Octopus Cat, are very good at hindering its annoying debuffs, especially because it has a single target. In this village, its Diva stage is a stage that got power creep by Soap Cat that can stall the Galactic 9 in stage effectively while allowing you to deal with the Honey One, Lories, and Puffingtons. Once you deal with Lories and Puffington, the stage is basically over, because the Honey One won't pose of a threat of their own. In Eternal Ancient Woods, it is paired with 2 various aqua enemies, and our beloved Golem Sunfish isn't actually too relevant here, since it doesn't really spawn during the boss wave, so its appearance here is basically just a way to bait you into bringing a wave and surge immune units. This stage basically serves as a reminder as to what happens if you don't bring a wave blocker to counter Honey Wawan, and his final appearance in Legend stages is in Pineapple Merchant, a stage that gets carried hard by Uriel, the Relic Bug, and Akuboris, are not even threatening because of it. Just keep alive for long enough, and you should just be fine. Ancient Magmojo is a Relic/Behemoth variant of Cassorian Hydro that appears in Zero Legends and other endgame stages, featuring a similar attack pattern to Hydro and Darjo, but being more dangerous due to having higher overall stats and a rarer typing. It also has a Surge KB, slow immunity, curse on the last hit of its 3-part multi-hit, and a 50% chance to create a level 2 Surge. Yeah, that's quite a lot. It is one of the more threatening boss enemies present in a whole new world. Its Diva stage in Zero Legends. The best strategy to take it down in this stage is to isolate it and use Doran to freeze it, then rush it down with anything else you got, like ID. Its second and final appearance in ZL as a version 13.5 is in Whole Lotta Something. It's slightly underwhelming due to it being very easy with Nala, Courier, and Octopus. You can only stay and watch it find itself an even more annoying stage. And finally, Igwande Iblujo, an enemy you'll have to face as a late game player. Igwande Iblujo is an enemy you'll have to face as a late game player. With 4.2 million health, 30k damage per hit, 400 range, many immunities, counter surge, and the ability to curse, he's sure to give you a bad time. This guy is not for the faint of heart.
but fortunately, this enemy only appears in Hunter's Map IV, continuation stages, and the top floor of Relic Citadel, the latter of which is easily beatable considering the Relic power creep we have in the game now. Like Concat, Nala, Luza, and finally Oriel. Is that all, or is it? Well, you see, after Relic trait, we still have 3 more videos to go, one discussing Aku enemies, one about sub-traits such as Behemoth, and then a finale for the series. So make sure to subscribe, as these will be crazy videos. Right before we start, I've been asked quite a lot, how am I able to play Battle Cats on my computer while live streaming and recording these videos? I mean, I'm sure you guys play PC games and would love to have your Battle Cats account on your PC as well. Well, the solution is actually really easy. All you need to do is download the LD Player. It's a free Android emulator that lets you play mobile games on your PC using a mouse or controller, whatever you find more convenient. Especially if you're a serious player, or just find playing games on your phone inconvenient. This is exactly what you need. Personally, I've been playing Battle Cats on the computer, and let me tell you, I'm progressing much faster, as I am able to repeat Behemoth Con stages, and even play multiple stages at the same time. If that doesn't sound good enough, you can also find hotkeys to your lineup, and actually time your Awakened Bahamut correctly. Just download the LD Player using this link, which is also in the description, and see it for yourself. Okay, so Aku enemies are the last type of enemies introduced in the game. These enemies are nothing like the enemies you've seen before. They were added in version 10.8, and the massive expansion known as the Aku Realms was added in 10.9, right after it. The interesting thing about the Aku Realms is that they serve as a remake of Empire of Cats, containing stages mostly filled to Aku enemies and other enemies as support. So why are Aku enemies so scary? Why does almost no player ever come close to encounter them? And what exactly are they anyways? So, Akus have 2 concepts introduced to them. First of all, every Aku enemy has this thing known as the Aku Shield. Aku Shields are quite similar to Starred Alien barriers, but they are much more interesting, with them being tied to damage dealt over time, instead of damage dealt in a single hit. An Aku Shield with 50k HP can be destroyed using only 2 hits that deal 25k damage, while a 50k HP barrier requires a 50k hit. In addition, shields renew themselves every time the enemy is knocked back. Well, that's not all. Akus have yet another twist that truly make them terrifying. Instead of me telling you what this mechanic is, you will see it throughout the video as I go through certain encounters. Okay, so who are those Aku enemies? You might be asking again. This video will take you through everything you need to know about them and give you a sense of what happens as you get close to the true ending of Battle Cats. Let's get started with some of the strong Aku enemies featured in this video. Sinner Snatchy is an Aku variant of Snatchy that acts basically the same as it, being just a simpler peon meant to be an annoyance on the battlefield. However, it is a very unique enemy due to its health surge. Let's go more in depth into what a Death Surge is. When an enemy with Death Surge dies, it has a chance, sometimes even 100% chance, of leaving behind a powerful surge attack that lingers on the battlefield for a bit and deals damage to anything that comes in contact with it. In the case of Sinner Snatchies, it leaves behind a level 1 surge between 350 and 750 that has a duration of 20 frames and deals 2800 damage at base magnification. This surge can be deadly with bad RNG, and especially with 600% Sinner Snatchies dealing ludicrous amounts of damage. Luckily, this enemy has a simpler encounter, Surge Immune units, which completely nullify its death surge and render it irrelevant. If you don't have any at hand, just pray the surge won't completely destroy your stack of units. Our next enemy is Condemned Ping, where this concept is taken even one step further. But right before that, I want to acknowledge how we literally hit 3,000 subscribers in 2 months and promise we will build the biggest Battle Cats community to ever exist and bring the game back to its prime. So make sure to subscribe to help this goal. Okay, so Condemned Ping is an Aku variant of Jackie Ping, featuring great stats with around 150k HP and 20k damage per hit at the late game standard 500% magnification. It also has a surprisingly high standing range of 280, making mid-rangers a good choice against it, and a 50% chance to slow cats for 3 seconds. All of these factors make for quite an annoying enemy, but his strength is actually his Death Surge, which is not only guaranteed, but is a level 3 surge, meaning it attacks 3 times. The range is quite deadly, at 450 to 900, meaning it could potentially snipe any backliners you have, especially at high magnifications. And without mentioning the fact, his slow can proc on surge too. You can see his annoying aspects at United Kingdom in the Aku Realms, where he's one of the main supporting peons to Henry and to Dolphinas. In the second latest appearance, at Pursuit of Understanding, he appears alongside some other Aku enemies that will be discussed later in the video. This stage consists only of enemies with Surge, therefore, if you have any Surge immune units, it won't be too bad. But if you're left without many good options, you might struggle a bit. Aku Gori is where stuff really begins, one of the most infuriating peons at the game due to his insane pushing power. It can be compared to Gori Black and Angelic Gori because he's quite similar to them, except he's slower and has fewer knockbacks, making him harder to juggle. At the late game, 300% magnification, he was nearly 20k damage per hit and nearly 40k DPS with 10% chance to Savage Blow. So he can basically kill everything in his path. There actually are some good options for stalling him, such as Maze Cat, but he's locked behind a brutal advent, so it is likely you won't have him for a while. His trait also has fewer counters than Black or Angel, so that's another thing that makes him so annoying and powerful. Bestowing Eternity is also a great stage to showcase his potential, especially because he is paired with the powerful Nala, and arguably much worse, Dode Spam in this stage. If you don't have Maze Cat, you're likely to get streamrolled quickly. No wonder its Japanese name translates to Hell Gorilla. Speaking of bestowing Eternity, it is also a stage where Aki makes an appearance, an Aqua variant of Kaki, and Haki that has quirks worth keeping in mind. First of all, it has a surprisingly low health stat of 50k3 HP, but we quickly understand why once we see its shield that has 450k HP, making Aki effectively have over 1 million HP without shield breakers. In addition, due to its 450 standing range, you're quite unlikely to be able to shield break with something like Aku Researcher and even Barrel Cat. In Boiling Blood, it appears over 5 times alongside Camille. But luckily, you have access to one unit that makes Aki quite irrelevant here. Supercar, a behemoth egg that can deal over 85k damage per hit with a guaranteed shield break, enough to easily one-shot Haki that always appears at 100% magnification. Moving on, Death Kori is an Aku variant of, you guessed it, Kori, that acts quite similar to the other Kori variants, especially Berserk Kori, due to it being very bulky wave attacker with high damage per hit. Due to his trait, he is harder to stop than Berserk Kori. In addition, without shield pierces, he has over 3.6 million health, due to his low range of only 190. In Burning Crimson, his debut stage, he's paired with a Borfin, since dealing with both threats at once is insanely hard. Lure and kill Borfin, using cats such as Mushroom Cat, who also appears to be a wave immune, making him quite a good attacker against Death Kori. And from here, it's just a slow game of chipping at him, since he's probably alone. Devil Wife is yet another Aku variant, this time Celeburu, and she's sort of a glorified Sinner Snitches, with many of the same characteristics as it, except she has a much higher damage per hit, at 600% magnification. At 600% magnification late game standard, she can easily kill whatever lands in her guaranteed surge. Besides that, she's quite a decent source of money, although she's very RNG because of her inconsistent surge radius. Muddy Fjord is an excellent example of this RNG behavior, as Devil Wife can easily destroy your entire backline of units with the Lacridius, 48k damage per hit, which carries over to the surge, which is basically an instant death. Muddy Fjord is also the stage where Fallen Bear makes an appearance, who is yet another very annoying Aku enemy to deal with. Fallen Bear alone created what is one of the most well-known Aku stages in Aku Realms, Mexico, where he's just being spammed over and over again with some Angel Peons and a Sunfish Jones as a super backliner. And Fallen Bear is at 150% magnification. This stage is undoubtedly one of the hardest in the Aku Realms if you don't have the right units to take care of the job. She's an Aku variant of Mr. Mer that is basically just a weaker version of her, with less HP but a level 1 surge attack instead of mini waves. Her surge is quite RNG too, like basically every other Aku enemy. Her debut stage, Breathtaking Waves, was quite power crept by powerful anti-surge attackers like Little King Dragon and great surge immune meat shields like Cactus. The supporting peons are also taken care of by these units, especially Little King Dragon with its mini wave talent. Midnight D is our next enemy on the list, and it's an Aqua variant of Rain D, an already annoying enemy itself. You might ask yourself, what is opponents cooked with this one, honestly? And the answer is a monstrosity with 300k base health, 1.6 million shield health total. That is very hard to take care of due to the fact that much like Rain D, Midnight D has 20 knockbacks, and each will replenish the shield to knock back 80k. Now, we're approaching the two final behemoths. The Folivorian is an Aqua/Behemoth variant of the Sloth, with incredibly high speed for a Sloth variant, even suppressing Elder Sloth. It has a very weak 50k HP shield, probably to bait you into wasting a Pierce on it. 1.7 million HP, wave immunity, a very weird 3-part multi-hit, with the first hit covering ranges of 1 to 500, the second 200 to 500, and the third 350 to 500, with the attackers dealing 17k damage each and a 40% chance to freeze for 100 frames, which is effectively a 78% chance of factoring in the multi-hits. This enemy is very bulky, but like most Sloth variants, it acts as a backliner and has a long TBA, so he's not too bad to deal with on his own. And last but not least, we have a super scary enemy, Vermilingor Brongblaster, another variant of a very common enemy, Master A. For a Master A variant, he stands at rather pitiful 300% range, making him impierceable on paper, but his Omni Strike reaches up to 350, meaning that this dream is not quite a reality. He's also very bulky, with 950k health, and another 1 million health from its shield, with 28k damage per hit and 70k DPS, making him shred everything that doesn't outrange him, as a cherry on the top. And yes, that will be all for the Aquas, but the series is not yet over. We have one more video in this series, covering all the sub-traits, and then a final video, as a finale to the series. Sub-traits are not even a full trait to be introduced in Battlecats, with the first sub-trait to be introduced being Behemoth, followed by Colossal and Sage, due to sub-trait being introduced much later on in the game, basically the very endgame. Most sub-trait enemies have insane high stats that are nothing like the traits you've seen before. In this video, I want to explain to you why all these enemies are so deadly, and as this is the last video in this trait series, I want to go over who are the most deadly enemies in the entire game. I appreciate the huge amount of support lately. It's crazy how we literally hit 4,000 subscribers within 2 months, and promise we will build the biggest Battlecats community, bringing the game back to its prime. So please subscribe to be part of this goal. With this being the last episode in the series, sub-traits are no joke, and they are much stronger than any normal trait in the game, including relics and aquas. Also, there will be a big compilation video next week covering this entire series as a 2-hour movie. This will be an insane project, which I hope you all watch. We will discuss the Behemoth and Colossal enemies. Our first Behemoth enemy will be Infernal Pegasus, who is somewhat threatening even for a red/Behemoth enemy, with 1.6 million HP and 400 range, 15k DPS and a level 4 mini wave, as well as 15% chance to freeze with over 300% uptime if it procs. Yeah, these are the stats you should be expecting this late in the game. But unfortunately, it is a red enemy, meaning it can get easily stalled by Sushi's cat's extreme amount of HP and Courier cats despite being inconsistent. It can easily deal extreme amount of damage. The next Behemoth enemy you might encounter is Patrol Hausku, a floating/Behemoth enemy with 1.85 million health and 36k damage per hit, surge immunities, and a 20% chance to create a level 1 surge between 400 and 1200 range. This guy sounds quite powerful on paper, but actually has a long distance attack spanning 330 to 1600 range, giving him a large blind spot that he can abuse to take down easily. Nearly all of his encounters in the game allow you to easily get in his blind spot, but in Birth of a True Man, he shows his true powers. Crustaceous Scissorex is an alien and behemoth variant of Helmet Krabi, who was also discussed in our alien video. He's very tanky with 1.4 million HP and over 37k damage per hit. One of his attacks has a reach of 600 range, which makes him very hard to deal with on paper, but his attack rate is quite slow, so tank units like Soapcat who is similar to an anti-alien sushi cat, works wonders against him. But the biggest catch is his lack of freeze immunity. If he's left alone, you can easily perma-freeze it with Sea Surfer and take it down without problem. But he's not always alone. Let's go to the last behemoth crawling stage in the game, an ancient volcano. This stage features Ensangleon the Calamity as a boss with plenty of supporting enemies, the main one being Scissorex. However, because the stage features only alien enemies, apart from Ensangleon, you can fill your lineup with anti-aliens and eventually take it down. Kassarian Darkjo is a black/behemoth variant of Kassarian Hydro, who cannot be taken down easily with Courier, like its variant. Although Courier does help immensely against it, with his massive 2 million health pool and 12.6k DPS, he can be a terrifying threat to deal with. He also has a chance to poison your cats, but it's quite low, so it might not proc frequently, and immunities to Surge, Freeze, and Weaken. Luckily, it has 11 knockbacks, so you might be able to juggle it. Angel Beast Rudrock. Rudrock is an Angel Gory on steroids, featuring 3 times the amount of HP, an Omni Strike with 50 piercing range, immunity to waves and surges, and a chance to create a level 2 wave. As goes with all the angels, Ramen does an insanely good job at stalling it, and is quite necessary to beat it effectively. In addition, Mushroom Cat deals insanely big amounts of damage against it, due to being a behemoth slayer and having massive damage against angels, both of which stack to 10 times damage. Formicidian Ariant is a zombie/behemoth enemy that is not too relevant, due to it appearing very late in the game, meaning you probably have great counters for it in stock. It can deal insanely large amounts of damage, and a hit from him could run in Enders, but his lacking survivability makes him very easy to get rid of. And even if he does get to attack, his long time between attacks makes him very likely to not attack again. Ancient Mugjo is a relic/behemoth variant of Gasarjo Hydro that appears in Zero Legends and other endgame stages, featuring a similar attack pattern to Hydro and Darkjo, but being more dangerous due to having higher overall stats and a rare typing. It also has Surge, KB, and Slow Immunity Curse on its last hit, because it has a 3-part multi-hit. And if that was not enough, a 50% chance to create a level 2 Surge. It is one of the most threatening bosses enemies present in a whole new world. Its debut stage in Zero Legends. The best strategy to take it down in this stage is to isolate it and use Doran to freeze it, then rush it down with anything else you got, like ED. Its second and final appearance in ZL, as of version 13.6, in a whole lot of something, is slightly overwhelming due to it being very easy with Nala, Courier, and Octopus. We can only stay and watch it to find itself an even more annoying stage, and those are all the behemoth enemies. Next up, for Colossal, you will start seeing the real difference in power, and you're just one type away from the absolute last type of enemies and the final stages of Battle Cats. So in Colossal enemies, we're gonna start off with JJ Jackrabbit, who is a red/behemoth variant of BB Bunny that has greater stats and very impressive 12.5k DPS at the common 200% magnification, with a multi-attack covering ranges 1 to 250. Fortunately, Courier exists, although he can still be sniped due to having the same 250 standing range. Slime and Kankan are always there as replacement though. Colossal doesn't really add anything too meaningful to it, as there aren't many Colossal Slayers in the game. Great Angel Chibino is an angel/colossal enemy that is the son of Mini Colonial and acts like an angel Taki variant with 160k health, a 300 to 600 range LD attack, and a guaranteed chance to slow and weaken cat units for 3 seconds with a 5.3 second TBA. Fortunately, his damage is quite low, so it's more of a disturbance than anything really threatening. Even though he shows up with 200% magnification in UL and onwards, he is mostly ignorable due to these factors and can be taken down easily due to having a big blind spot. Independence Day, his debut stage, shows that quite well. Mega Baba is a Traitless colossal enemy that is a variant of Baba, with insane damage values that seems deadly on paper, but his low HP makes him not so bad because of Hitman, Kankan, or any other damage dealer. He has the potential to be dangerous and crippling, but the stages he's present in don't feature that as one of now. And finally, what you've all been waiting for, Sage enemies. Tarsiel is an ancient/sage variant of Floris and Lemur that can basically be called an Angel Crockley. Tarsiel acts similar to Loris with its LD attack covering 420 to 770 range, much like Loris, 400 to 800. Both have a huge blind spot, but Tarsiel has a slow ability, which is quite annoying considering the slow duration is longer than his TVA, meaning he can just spam attacks and permaslow anything in his way. He also has a 650 health and a somewhat low 5k damage per hit, but over time you can really feel it. When something gets to its blind spot, however, it is sure to die. Dark Dober is a black/sage variant of Dober PD, being one of the newest enemies added to the game, as all sages are, and it's quite a threatening one. Increased health, DPS, and an Omni Strike reaching up to 350 range, and the guaranteed chance to weaken units up to 25% of their original attack stat, with added mini-waves to transfer the effect more effectively. In addition, due to being a sage, he has a resistance to all debuffs given by cats without Sage Slayer, a very rare ability due to the subject being so uncommon nowadays. This deadly combination makes him a very hard enemy to take down, which is surprising for a black enemy. The best counter for him is talented Dark Laser, due to having weakened and immunity as well as high stats. In addition, wave immune backliners could also work because of Dark Dober's low standing range, and the wave immunity means they won't get weakened by him, causing his health to effectively quadruple. And yeah, that would be all for the trait series.
And that would be about it. Again, thank you for watching. This was a huge project that was put in a ton of effort into. And make sure to subscribe, as the next series has already started discussing the best lineup versus every trait.